right, so we are now at technically lesson six. So we're going to start talking about the distinctions in the nervous system. So the nervous system in general, as you guys know, is the brain, nerve cells, the spinal cord, all of those things. So we're going to get a little more in depth. If you look at as like kind of telephone poles all triggering to each other, sending that signal, that's essentially what it is. So our CNS, our central nervous system, that is our brain and our spinal cord. That is our body's main control center. So when we talk about the central nervous system, it is just our brain and spinal cord, and it's on one central line typically. From there, we have our peripheral nervous system. So our peripheral nervous system is going to be all of those nerves that run throughout our body that are not necessarily part of our brain. All right. So that's going to include all of those sensory nerves from outside the brain spinal cord. That's going to include everything that goes to the organs, the skin, the limbs, etc. All right, so again, central is one straight line, brain, spinal cord, peripheral, everything that's outside of that brain spinal cord. So there are two major divisions within the PNS or peripheral nervous system. Actually, I call it peripheral because, it sounds a little less awkward. So the motor pathway is one. What that does is send signals from the brain to muscles or glands. Then we have the sensory pathway. So that sends signals from sensory receptors to the brain. So both are working, both are functioning, but they're carrying that sensory information and creating movement. So, the somatic nervous system, that's going to be the nerves that transmit from brain to skeletal muscles and allow for voluntary movement. So, if you are doing like jumping jacks, your somatic nervous system is kicked in. You've decided, hey, I want to exercise in this fashion, and that is how you're working. Likewise, our sensory neurons, so that's our afferent neurons, they're carrying that sensory information throughout the brain spinal cord. On the other side, our motor neurons, so our movement ones, are efferent. So we have afferent, efferent. So it's the exact same idea, except for motor allows physical action. So keep in mind, motor is physical, afferent is sensory. All right, and then we also have interneurons in that frame. So interneurons are neurons that are within the brain spinal cord that communicate internally and intervene between sensory inputs and motor outputs. So essentially, what they're saying is, hey, you know, this kind of fits in all these areas. We're going to go ahead and communicate that. We're going to try to intervene and figure out what is what and where it goes. All right. So we also have an autonomic nervous system. So what that is it's our system that kind of controls those things that we don't think about. So breathing, we typically don't think about. It just kind of happens. Um, Blood pumping, again, it's another involuntary unconscious action. We look at digestion, heartbeat, work of other internal organs. We are not sitting there telling, our liver to function the way it does, our kidneys to filter out, everything it does. That's an unconscious action that our body just knows how to do. So that is thanks to our autonomic nervous system. Next, we have the sympathetic nervous system. So that is going to include a lot of those same organs, but that is what's being triggered during fight or flight. So if you guys see that example off to the side, during fight or flight, you typically have a faster heart rate, right? Your pupils are going to be a little bit bigger. Aren't necessarily going to digest food, all right? Um, Glucose is going to be released from the liver. You're going to have epinephrine or norepinephrine be released. And then we're not going to go into the bottom part, but you guys can read that there. So, what's going on whenever fight or flight happens is your heart rate's raising, your blood pressure is going to raise, your digestion's going to slow down, you're going to raise your blood sugar, and then you're going to be cooled with perspiration. So those are all things that kind of help you get your body ready to be more alert. Likewise, when you start calming down, if you guys can see on the other side, that is when everything kind of starts to go back. So the heart rate starts to slow down. The pupils tend to get a little bit smaller. You don't need to let in as much light. You don't need to see as much stuff to survive. Digestion comes back, the gallbladder is stimulated, blood sugar is more regulated, and so forth. All right. So again, we talked about rest and digest, but that is the main difference between fight, flight, or freeze and rest and digest is this little chart right here. So when you're resting, everything kind of does the opposite of what it would do in fight or flight. So we are not going to watch this, but if you are interested in watching this, Brain Games has a lot of really cool stuff. So this one kind of shows how people freak out. It shows how their brain is functioning during that freak out. So we're going to go ahead and cut this lesson short right there. We're going to start our next one where we talk about the neuron.